Hi guys, in this video I'm going to talk about how to think about the finances behind running an elective. You might have just watched the video where I spoke about how to organise an elective, or you might have watched my elective vlog about my time in Australia. So we're going to move on and talk about a bit of the behind the scenes, how much it costs to go, how to afford it, and sort of the breakdown of some of the unexpected costs that you might incur on an elective. So I made a very nice spreadsheet. I'm just going to pop down and get it. There we go. So I wanted to track all my spending while I was in Australia so I could share it all with you guys and help you figure out if you can afford to go away, how much money you need to start saving, and how going to different places will cost you different amounts, so it might influence your choices a little bit. By the way, do you like this nice view behind me? I'm obviously not in Australia, but we're back in the studio in the UK with a beautiful green screen. So here we are. So we'll talk a little bit about how much it cost. In total, I was away for 11 weeks in Australia and it cost £5,378.51 was everything I spent. So we'll talk a little bit about the things that I had to pay for before I went away, the things that I had to pay while I was there, and some of the things that I spent as well that you might not have thought about. So, before I went away, I had to spend £361.86 on vaccinations, which were £40. I needed to have a DTPA vaccine and some checks as well that you have to do through occupational health. The visa was free because I just went on a holiday visa because you can get up to 3 months for free. I had to have an Australian police check for £24. That's one of the requirements from the university when they're organising the placements. They give you a really long list of things that you've got to get sorted, so it's really important to be organised. I had to pay for a little bit of insurance for £18. The university provided insurance for most of the trip. It was just for the holiday after where I needed some insurance. I bought a waterproof phone case for £45 for when I did the Great Barrier Reef. New suitcase was 32 quid. £36 was spent on power banks, chargers, cables, £50 on toiletries because I just thought, what if there's not a shop there, which, you know, buy your toiletries there, don't weigh yourself down. Selfie stick, 8 quid, absolute essential item when you're travelling by yourself. 80 quid on some new clothes, can't really remember what I bought. And camera film, because I'm into my film photography, that cost me 27 quid. So that was the money that I spent before I went away. And then obviously the massive cost is flights. So talking about transport that I spent while I was away, my flight from Manchester to Sydney was £633 return. Then I needed a flight to get me from Brisbane a little bit further up the coast, that was £63. And then I spent £91 getting back down from Cairns down to Sydney after I finished my travels at the end. Obviously all of this is like extra cost. You could go and do an elective, you don't have to travel afterwards. So if you're struggling for cash, you know, you can trim down the trip and just go away for the actual elective period. You don't need to stay and have the holiday. So you could do it cheaper than this. A train to the airport was £33 return. And then when I drove up the coast, I hired a car. So I had a car for 5 weeks and that cost me £571 for 5 weeks, which I don't think is too bad. I think that's pretty good. But they get you with a one-way fee of £110 because they have to pay someone to drive it back down. And toll charges as well. So they did this thing where they get you with all these costs. They tried to rinse me when I got my car and said the one-way fee is £290. I said, hang on a minute, no it's not, because I've already paid for this. They wanted me to pay it twice. And they said if you drive through a toll charge, which you can't avoid because it's Sydney and Brisbane, two massive cities, they charged £38 admin fee plus whatever tolls you go through. So they're laughing really. So £43.92 on toll charges, and then fuel. I spent, hang on, where's the fuel? I spent £122 on fuel while I was there, which isn't too bad. Fuel in Australia is so cheap, it's about, well, it's half what it costs in the UK. The balancing thing to that is that everywhere in Australia is doubly as far, so the petrol cost is about the same because you have to drive further, but it's half as cheap. But it's nice to go and see, oh, it's 60 cents a litre, it's nice. Okay, so that's all the transport costs. So the total transport for flights, car hire and train tickets was £1,500 and 45 pence. So, placement costs. The Sydney placement cost me 1,100 Australian dollars, which is about 650 quid. And the accommodation, I said in my other video, I stayed in the hospital and the accommodation was £35 a week, which was so cheap. So total for that placement was £763 for 4 weeks in Sydney. And then my Brisbane placement, I was so lucky that didn't cost me a penny. The placement was free, the accommodation was free because I lived with the GPs, so that made a massive difference to actually being able to afford to do this trip. If we're already tapping in at £5,500, if I'd have had to pay for that placement and pay for accommodation, we'd be knocking on, you know, £7,000, which is getting to be a little bit ridiculous. So another thing that I had to spend while I was there was on hostels. In between my placements and afterwards, I spent about 3 weeks in hostels. The average cost for a hostel per night at the moment is between £18 and £19. Obviously it's more if you're staying in the city centre and cheaper if you're going off to different places. So in total for 3 weeks in hostels cost me £347. I also did some trips while I was away. I spent a total of £566 on trips and days out and nights away and things. So I did a day trip around the Whitsunday Islands, that cost me $120. I needed a bus to get me to those places, so I spent $100 on buses. I did a trip round the rainforest in Cairns for $170. Waterfall trip, which was really good actually. These Uncle Brian tours are absolutely fantastic, so if you're going to Australia around Cairns, definitely check those out. So the waterfall trip, that cost me $120. I went to Melbourne for the weekend, that cost me $144 in flights, and I spent the rest of my money on a helicopter over the Great Barrier Reef, which was just the best thing I've ever done. I was absolutely terrified, but like the views out of that helicopter were amazing. And then we landed on a boat, we had like a posh dinner, I was treated like a VIP, did a bit of snorkeling around the reef as well, so that was really cool, and that cost me $340, but definitely worth it. So I think that is most of the main charges. And then I set a few budgets to sort of help me day to day, because obviously I needed to buy things while I was there to sort of work out how much spending money I was going to take. So I set myself a daily allowance of $37 for food and drink, which is about 20 quid. So I thought if I can do every day on £20 to eat out, because I eat out way too much. You could have done it cheaper than I did it if you'd have cooked in every night, but you know, you're on holiday, aren't you? You want to enjoy it. And also, a table for one is actually really liberating, so definitely do that. So 20 quid a day for food and drink was sort of the budget, and I also set a daily transport allowance for getting buses and trains in and out of the city and things of $6 a day. The transport actually worked out a lot more than that, which I wasn't really expecting. You have an Opal card in Sydney, which you can top up, but because the hospital I was at was a little bit further away from the city centre than I was expecting, I used more money going in and out on that travel card. So I tried to stick to that £20 a day budget, and I managed it nearly. I did a daily average of £23.20, which I think is that's near to what I was expecting, so I did well there. So over the 3 months I was away, I spent £728 on food and drink, £335 on shopping, which is like buying groceries and buying clothes and things. Not that I bought many clothes. Travel, I spent £330. That's including the fuel and the train tickets everywhere. Then I spent £62 on souvenirs, a load of tat that, you know, was gone in the bin. Bought some oven gloves. I was dead excited. Kangaroo oven glove. As soon as I tried to use it, it burnt my hand and seared off the edge of the oven glove, so that was a waste of money. So we could have made that budget a little bit less if I didn't waste money on those oven gloves. And then there's a section of other, which was £300, and I'm not quite sure what comes under other, but for £300 unaccounted for. Yeah, what is that? Oh no, hang on, I've got notes next to them so I can tell you what they were. Haircut, so I needed a haircut while I was there. Oh, I bought a ticket to go to up the Sydney Eye Tower, the Koala Hospital, went to the zoo. So the other things is like attractions, zoo tickets, haircuts. We went to the Blue Mountains, we had to pay like entry fees into there. National Park entries, another haircut. That was a nice haircut in Brisbane, very pampered. Had the back of my neck waxed and everything. Yeah, so that's it. So the total extra spending, apart from how much I had planned to spend, was £1,763. So overall, just to recap, there was a total cost of £5,378.51 was the total overall cost. With things that I had to organise before I went was £360, flights, transport, £1,500, the Sydney placement was £760, the hostels came to £350, and then the daily spending that we've just spoke about came to about £1,700. And I think that is everything accounted for. So I hope that that's quite useful to hear a little bit about how much it costs. I know it sounds like I've just thrown a load of numbers at you really, but I thought it was interesting to track how much I was spending so you could have a bit of an idea, because I didn't know at all how much it was going to cost, because not many people track their spending, and also not many people will be quite open with how much they spent. But I think it's important to make sure people know how much money they need to be setting aside for these things and what they can actually realistically afford to do. So if you found that video useful, please share it with somebody else, and have a look at the other videos that we've got on electives and how to organise one. If you've got your elective coming up, you're going to have an amazing time. I'm very jealous. So enjoy that. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and thank you very much.